Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
I love this sign. I found a picture of this sign on the door of a home in Oregon. I think I'm going to get this sign for my house. It says, in big letters, "No soliciting. We are too broke to buy anything. We know who we are voting for. We have found Jesus. And unless you are giving away beer, please go away." Morning, everybody. Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a Patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance. Come on, Patriots, stand up and be proud. Good morning, good morning. And a good morning to you and yours out there in Radio Land. Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Right now in the middle of a big spring tire sale. Stop in at any one of the 7 locations today. And don't forget some of our great advertisers like Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's go to the phone line and have a real patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, good morning.
Yes, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Wills. Appreciate it. And right now, without any lax on the time, we will take a look at our weather, brought to you by K&R Rental. Good morning, Roger and the crew at 256 South, 600 West of Heyburn. Yes, they do offer the rental of the best tools and equipment anywhere around. You need a job to finish, they can help. Not sure what you need? They can help. Just give them a call. Talk to them. Stop in. 678-3122. I'll repeat that. 678-3122. K&R Rental. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Increasing clouds for today and expect some precipitation for later on this week. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Increasing clouds as we make our way through the day and into the afternoon and evening hours. High near 46. Winds out of the east at about 10 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 21 miles an hour. For tonight, we do have a 50% chance of rain and or snow showers before midnight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 33. By tomorrow, 70% chance of rain showers are likely. High of 49 and winds out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Rain showers tapering off for tomorrow night with a low of 33. Then we do have a slight chance of rain and or snow showers for Thursday, expecting a high of 49. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
Gina, I appreciate it. You always do such a great job. Well, I'll tell you what, they've got everything over at K&R Rental. Whether you need an excavator, a log splitter, whether you're getting all set to think about in a couple of weeks, I hope springtime will be sprung and we'll be thinking about tilling up gardens and soil. They've got it all over at K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 West of Heyburn, right there on the Burley-Paul Highway. Number to call, 678-3122. Oh, by the way, Thursday this week is sale day. You better believe it, Merv May, Cade Rogge, and Lance Udy. The sale that works for you, the Burley Livestock Sale Yard. Sale time, 10 o'clock on Thursdays at 1100 Occidental Avenue in Burley. Number to call for cattle consignments and sale information, 678-9411. That number again, 678-9411. Sale day, Thursday at the Burley Livestock Sale Yard, 10 o'clock. Don't you miss it. We have an outstanding array of people coming on this morning, including Christine Williams talking about a book, The Challenge of Modernizing Islam. That's going to be interesting, her book. Frosty Woldridge is going to be here. Dr. History is going to be here. And talking about Hollywood and how it's just fallen apart at the seams, James Herson will be here at 10:30. I want to remind everybody, too, about Daryl's Cleaners at 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. I mentioned the other day, and a lady called me, and she says, no, wait a minute, I drop my clothes off, and I prepay, and I get 10% off? I said, yes, ma'am. Well, that is a great deal for you and everybody at Daryl's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. And by the way, if you don't have time to do your own washing, they will wash, dry, fold, and iron all your clothes. All you got to do is stop in, just like Mom used to. Well, stop into Daryl's Cleaners today. Kevin and Cindy and the crew, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. Really, really good folks. I want to just say, and I'm not going to say a lot about this story this morning, because I don't want to give a story any more legs until I find out if it's even worthy of really putting forth an effort. There was a front page story the other day in the Times News about the lieutenant governor. And they were really after her as far as maybe the headline saying McGeachin facing condemnation and some people asking for her resignation. All of this over a picture that was taken with two gentlemen outside of Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin's office, and of two of the gentlemen that represent the 3%ers that are absolutely in the news quite extensively over the last couple of years due to the Bundy situation, etc. These two gentlemen did nothing wrong. The lieutenant governor did nothing wrong. And I'm just going to let my case lay at the feet of the public, and I'm not going to share in the condemnation at all. As far as what the lieutenant governor did, she had her photo taken with two gentlemen. There are a lot of people in the news, whether it's been in the past, whether it's Obama, Bush, or the Clintons, Hillary, etc. Many, many people maybe having pictures taken with someone that somebody didn't like or care for. I'm going to let it go at that. And I think the story was an overreach, basically, by Democrats on the left to throw mud at the lieutenant governor, Janice McGeachin. We'll see if this story has any more legs. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Let me know. This is your show, your opinion. Give me a call. Don't forget Danny's Restaurant at 611 North Overland in Burley. And it's so true. I mean, the menu items. You sit there and you go, well, you're going in for breakfast, and you sit there and go, holy cow, I don't know what to choose. It all looks delicious and is. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, anytime, all the time, all the desserts, super service with very nice people serving you at America's Diner, Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley, and another location at 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. Yep. The great place of Zeb's Lunch Bunch once a month at Denny's Restaurant, America's Diner. And our thanks also to our dear friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric. They're there early in the morning. I can see through my little VistaVision phone. Rita's at her desk working right now. Glenn's out in the back. They're just all, the whole crew is working hard for you with all your heating, cooling, and electrical needs. My goodness, all you have to do is stop in at 7:30 in the morning till 5, Monday through Friday. Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. And if you want to have whatever you need on the counter and ready to go, if you're in a hurry, call them at 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they provide warm winters and cool summers. Caller, a good morning to you. Go ahead.
Good morning. It's the Yummy Man. Today at the Burley Senior Center, we're having lasagna, and Debbie really makes that delicious. Oh, we'll have some green beans and lettuce salads and yummy dessert.
There you go again, Joe. You left me hanging on the tree branch. Yummy dessert. You weren't defining what it is. Are we going to have a Joe Taylor special, or what is it?
I don't know whether Debbie's decided yet or not, but it'll be good. I'll assure you of that.
I'll tell you what they ought to do is whenever they don't give you the yummy dessert name, that means that you, Joe Taylor, have to go to the grocery store and buy about 5 gallons of ice cream and start dishing.
Hey, now that sounds like a winner right there. I'll go for that.
All right. Joe, God bless you, man. We'll send everybody over to the Senior Center on that.
Good day.
Thank you. Right there on Oberlin. Thank you very much. Calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I'm just going to say this, and then I'm going to do a commercial. Do not let this female terrorist out of Alabama back in the country. No, the door is closed. If she comes back at all or attempts to get back, or our courts say, yeah, we'll take her back, she should go straight to Guantanamo. And I'm going to leave it like that, and then we're going to talk more about it in just a moment. I want to remind you, too, about our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. Nick Greenwell and all of the outstanding, top-notch physical therapists that can help you with all the various exercises, and of course they have the only hydrotherapy pool of its kind in this area. They know and they can help you get back to being you. I know that firsthand because it's worked for me. I urge you to call the number 678-1191, 678-1191, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Please let them help you get rid of your aches and pains, recouping from a surgery. They are the best. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. Before we get too involved in this, I also want to say a big shout-out to a new sponsor, a new advertiser on our program. We had him on the air yesterday for the first time. And I want to say hello to Big Jake over there at Rain for Rent. Jake Spalding and the crew, you better believe it, they're located at 134 South, 600 West of Paul. Even with a possibility of snow in the forecast, hopefully a lot of this bad weather will be short-lived and we're going to be going into spring. You'd better be ready for irrigation season. And, of course, Rain for Rent, a Reinke Diamond dealer, and they've got all the Platinum Plus certified pivot techs to help you get everything set up just right for your irrigation season. And don't forget, dedicated sales and service staff to serve you at Rain for Rent. Number to call, 438-5065, and they're located at 134 South, 600 West of Paul. You stop in or give them a call today. This woman that smiles so sweetly and is always photographed with her little child on her lap. Oh, it's just such a great picture of motherhood, and it makes me sick. She is a woman that absolutely decided that she was going to side with ISIS, left Alabama, went to the Middle East, married not one, not two, but 3 ISIS husbands that were fighters against our soldiers, men and women, killers. She should never come back to this country. She is a traitor to this country, and she is absolutely, possibly still tied to terrorist ways and means. I do not know how you feel. I want you to give me a call. But I absolutely stand up with President Trump and all of his administration in saying, no, she is not going to come back. She is a traitor, and she will never set foot on U.S. soil again. And if she does, it will be for imprisoning for the rest of her life. She absolutely gave approval in many of her quotes about beheadings and killings while she was connected to ISIS. And her father now is suing our government to let her back into this country. Now, there's a great example of Muslims showing their force, showing their coercion. And I wonder where Congressman Mike Simpson is on this issue. I haven't heard anything. I haven't read anything. If some of you in the audience have, in regards to our congressman saying what should or shouldn't be done in this situation, please let me know, because he's not speaking out. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. Are you backing up or are you there? Well, Wheels, I have no idea, but they're not there. Call back, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Give me a call. That is one of the biggest gripes I have, and I know one of the biggest complaints that you out there in the audience have. Where are our people? Where are they in speaking out about very prominent stories in the news that are affecting everybody in this country? Whether it's the economy, whether it's what's going on with the Democrats after the Trump administration, whether it's issues like this with this woman that wants to come back into the United States, an avowed ISIS supporter. Where are you? Where are our leaders? Where are our senators and congressmen letting us know, the people that voted them in and gave them that job, where are they on these issues? Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Zeb. You know, even if you brought this woman back and put her in prison, she would be in there indoctrinating hundreds of people who hate America already.
Tony, how do we know... Wait a minute. How do we know that she could at all be believed in saying, oh, I've had an epiphany, I've seen the light, oh, I'm so sorry that I went over and joined ISIS? I'm not buying into any of this garbage. And if that's the case, where somebody goes over and they are okaying beheading and killings and everything else, holy cow, all it takes is an I'm sorry and you come back to live in the greatest country in the world? No, she should never be allowed back in.
Well, what made her go there in the first place? This is what gets me when people go over there to the enemy. Do they expect to live a gracious life?
I can't answer that question.
A hateful person?
Tony, I can't answer that question as to why anybody would be stupid enough, gullible enough, or hate this country that much that they would want to go over and join such an absolutely heinous group as ISIS. But all I'm saying is this isn't an oops. This isn't a mistake. It's a choice. There's where people make such a drastic mistake in assuming the word mistake is applicable to this. No, she made a choice to go over there, live with ISIS, marry 3 ISIS killers, and state things about beheadings and killings. That was her choice. And now it's our choice to say, no, sweetheart, you are never coming back.
Well, she made a bed she can lay in it now. We've got enough people like Cortez running around in this country right now. We don't need any more here.
Oh, my goodness sakes. You hit the nail on the head there. Tony, God bless you, man. Thank you so much.
Okay, Zay.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Calls are welcome and appreciated. What do you think? You want to let her back in? You want to have her just, oh, my goodness, here she comes. Let's open up our arms. Let's give her a little parade. Let's let her have her day at Walmart. Oh, my. I don't want her back. No. I compliment Mike Pompeo and others in this administration for speaking out in no uncertain terms. No. She will not come back. That's it. Ark Animal Hospital at 750 21st Street near Connection Credit Union in Heyburn. And I know that Dr. Bill is going to be on our program Thursday, as a matter of fact. And he's going to be talking about a disease that can be transferred from animals to humans called leptospirosis. And I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be on at 10:30 on Thursday. Don't forget, for the best of care and the best of health for your animals, whether you've just got little dogs and kitty cats or a great big herd of dairy cows, you get a hold of them today. Ark Animal Hospital, 750 21st Street in Heyburn. Number to call, 678-1177. They do have the warm hearts for the cold noses. All right, your turn. Please, yesterday we had a great amount of phone calls. Give me a call here again this morning. I want to hear what you have to say about that Alabama woman that left here 5-6 years ago and decided, oh, ISIS is so great. Oh, they're beheading people. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, they're killing people. Oh, that's wonderful. And now, oops. And wants to come back here to the United States? No. Never. I felt really bad. I've got to get this next little story in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But an actor in Hollywood that I had a lot of respect for, and that's unusual for me to say this, but I knew him through some other people because of a part that he played a couple of years ago. Well, it's been longer than that. Luke Perry, an actor that played in the movie, the lead in the movie about a friend of mine, Lane Frost. And it was the movie 8 Seconds. Well, Luke Perry absolutely was outstanding in that movie. The portrayal of the life of Lane Frost, and looked like him. I mean, man, a lot of the similarities in facial and the way he did things, etc. So he did a great job in that movie. Well, he died yesterday at 52 years of age from a stroke. A very sad circumstance. Left behind a relatively young family, and he was an actor that you could and should have respect for. There's not many of them I can say that about, but Luke Perry, and he played an outstanding movie with 8 Seconds, the story of Lane Frost, passed away yesterday from a stroke. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Oh, here's a story that you can sink your teeth into. This just came out last evening, and we've been following it a little bit through this morning, early at 4 o'clock this morning on the national news. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Whoa, you might think, well, what did she say stupid now? Well, wait a minute. It's not what you think it is. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her campaign manager, they may be in a heap of trouble. And I'll tell you why, because now there are finger pointings going on at her campaign for misuse, mismanagement, and fraudulent use of campaign donated funds. Oh, yes. They are finding out that some of the money, and to a large extent, it's a big amount, $1 million. $1 million was funneled, I love that word, to a private corporation. Why, my goodness. And maybe the little girl, with a extremely big mouth, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and her campaign manager may be on the hot seat to answer a whole bunch of questions as to why and how come. When she was addressed with this question about campaign financing and mismanagement, you know what? Look at the body language. If you get a chance to see the tape, she's sitting at a table, and she acted like a deer in the headlights, and automatically and immediately she shifted the blame to Donald Trump. It was really kind of despicable, and I almost felt sorry for her because she is so stupid and so gullible. And you see the tape, you'll see what I mean. It was like, oh, well, I don't think I did anything wrong, but what about Donald Trump? What about all the misgivings and the bad dealings that he's had? Automatically trying to shift the story from her and her campaign manager to the tune of where they were funneling over $1 million to a private corporation. My. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I hope you give me a call, and while I'm waiting for your call this morning, I'd like you to remember that Ag Express is looking for drivers, and they're looking for you. Yep, they've got opportunities, full and part-time positions. That's right. They're looking for drivers and mechanics and dispatchers. What are you waiting for? I mean, come on, folks. There are some great job opportunities out there. Ag Express, you're home every night, and medical and dental programs, vacation programs and schedules, year-round work, new equipment. I'm telling you, you better give them a call. Ag Express. And I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers. And then from that point, you can find out more. I urge you to call Tony or Dale over in Paul at 438-5025 or in Burley, Chad at 678-4625, extension 1. Ag Express is looking for drivers. Ag Express is looking for you. All right, your turn. Give us a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Give me a call, please. I would love to talk to you. The Democrats, I don't know why. I still have to figure this out. The Jerry Nadlers and the Adam Schiffs and the Swalwells of California and the rest of the irksome Democrats, they now are compelled, for some reason, to disregard anything that is or is going to come out in the Mueller investigation and say, nope, we can't buy that. No. After 2 years and multi-millions of dollars, we're not going to buy into the Mueller report. So, we, the Democrats, a sanctified group of elitists, we are going to start our own investigations. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you way back before Christmas, I looked this up yesterday, that this is what they would do. The Democrats would not buy into a Mueller report that was not going to be kind and gracious to the Democrats' philosophy. Okay? And I said that they would start their own mess. Well, it's starting. They issued 81 letters yesterday. 81 letters, many of which went to the Trump family and the Trump administration, warning those people that they were going to be subpoenaed and they were going to be testifying about what they knew about anything as far as business dealings or whatever with Donald Trump, his businesses, etc. What they're trying to do, in layman's terminology, is build a crime. Think about it. They're trying to build a crime. In 99.9% of all criminal investigations, we already know what the crime is. Therefore, the people that are trained to investigate, those that are trained to be detectives, those are trained to go find out all the facts, they take that supposed crime and they go from A to Z to find out, who is illegal and who is legal within the realms of that story. In this case, the Democrats don't have a crime, so they're building one. They're going to go find one. They're going to create one. And many of the same people that have been subpoenaed and their lives have been destroyed financially and also with their personalities, thanks to the Democrats, with the Mueller investigation, Carter Page being one of them, and others that I've had on my program, they literally robbed Peter to pay Paul, and they're all broke. They're all broke trying to protect themselves. Now, with another letter being sent by the Democrats that you are going to be involved in at least one more investigation or maybe numerous investigations, how can these people afford all the time away from their jobs, away from their families, and how can they afford the money? I remember a couple of people that have been on my program talking about this, and they said that they went through all their children's savings accounts, everything they had for college, etc., and they were broke, trying to protect themselves and defend themselves. And now the Democrats are going to do it again. There was advice given last night by an attorney, a former U.S. attorney, Joe DeGenova. I keep mispronouncing his name. And he said, you know what they ought to do? Everybody that was sent a letter ought to sit back and just say, no, and take the fifth and not give them anything. Just plead the fifth. I'm not going to say anything or do anything because it might incriminate me. Bingo, bango, let it go. And I agree with him. Don't give the Democrats anything. Your thoughts, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Don't forget Berry Equipment and Rental. Sales, service, and parts, and of course, they are located at 159 West Highway 30 in Burley with Juan. Hello, Juan. And 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin Falls with Eli and the Nampa location. Woo, boy. Juan kind of broke the ice the other day when he was on the program and said that he went to the hierarchy and said, hey, you know what we ought to do? We ought to offer everything at 0% interest for 48 months. And you know what the hierarchy did? They said, yeah, it's a good idea. So don't forget equipment sales, equipment rentals. Boy, this is the place to go. Berry Equipment and Rental, like they've got all the Bobcats. They've got all the different shapes and sizes of Bobcats. You stop in and see them today. Berry Equipment and Rental, Burley, Twin Falls, and Nampa. All right, your turn, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Did you hear about the illegal alien? Remember the story in Iowa? Oh, boy, I'm probably going to be off on the time frame, but I think it was about a year and a half ago. I'll stand corrected on that. With a young lady by the name of Molly Tibbetts. Remember her? And they finally found her in an Iowa cornfield, and an illegal alien was arrested for the murder, and he confessed to the murder. Remember that story? Well, now it takes another turn. And it makes my blood just boil. This illegal alien now says that he thinks his rights were violated when he was arrested and he confessed to the killing of Molly Tibbetts. When I heard this, I did a couple of loops and backflips out of my lazy boy, and I thought, here is an illegal alien in this country, the United States of America, committing a crime, the most heinous of crimes, murder, and he shouldn't have been here in the first place. And this lovely young college student, Molly Tibbetts, lost her life. Family absolutely devastated. And he confesses to the crime, and now he says, well, no, I think my rights were violated. What rights? Are we passing out rights to people that shouldn't be here? Illegal? I am so sick and tired of the verbiage by the loons on the left that say, well, nobody's illegal. Nobody's an alien. Look up the words and try to get past Ned and the first grade reader and your understanding that illegal means they have done an illicit illegal act, and alien means they are foreign to this country. They are not a native or a citizen of this country. Look it up, understand. Illegal alien is the proper terminology. And please, somebody tell me out there in Radio Land, what rights that you and I share as citizens of this country do they all of a sudden assume? Call me on that, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I don't know why we give everything up as citizens in this country to those that have never worked for or provided the blood, sweat, and tears for as citizens. My goodness, what's going on? Somebody help me out on this, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. And another story that I want to throw at you this morning that just absolutely upset me. In Gilbert, Arizona, I know the area very well. In Gilbert, Arizona, at the Gilbert High School, they had Pride Day. Yeah, where everybody could dress up and show their pride and how they honor certain things, etc. Well, some of the students, men and women at this high school, boys and girls, dressed up with Trump T-shirts and caps and sweatshirts, Make America Great Again, and they had a Trump flag. That's it. Plain and simple. There was no yelling and screaming or anything. They just wore Make America Great Again sweatshirts and T-shirts and caps and had a Trump flag. The superintendent and the principal said, no. And they got suspended from the high school for wearing Make America Great Again. And they were told they could come back if they took off the sweatshirts and the T-shirts. And God bless them, they said, no, you do not have the right to do this. And the parents are standing behind them, and they're going to fight this. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, it's just me again, Zeb. Why didn't the Republican Party go after somebody like Menendez?
Oh, yeah, there's a classic case, Robert Menendez, that has so many skeletons of illicit happenings in his life as a political leader back in the Senate. I can't understand why they haven't gone after him and quite a few. And remember, Jerry Nadler from New Jersey is not exactly squeaky clean with ivory soap on his hands either.
Well, can't they get somebody like Mueller, the Republican Party, can't they go after people like Menendez and the rest of the crooks they've got on that side?
You know, this is interesting because I was saying this the other day to a good friend of mine on the phone. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So when you got somebody like Jerry Nadler from New Jersey, and you've got all these others that have created and caused problems in the past that they're trying to cover it up, Richard Blumenthal comes to mind. He lied about his service in Vietnam. Lied about it. Blatantly lied about it. And nobody brings up all these lies, and there should be a reverse. Oh, okay. You want to come after us? Well, we're going to have a hearing to come after you.
I think we got a whole list of turncoats in the Republican Party. You don't know what party really they belong to.
Well, my question is anybody, and I'm not mentioning just our representation, but any, who really is going to stand up and be John Wayne? Who really is going to stand up and say this is wrong and we've got to correct this? Who really is going to be tough? Who's going to show some backbone? And quite frankly, Tony, I can't come up with any names.
We got the John Wayne up there in the White House, but he's surrounded by I don't know what.
Yeah, and some of these weak-kneed Republicans, and I'm going to throw a lot of them in the mix right here this morning that I despise because they won't stand with the president on the need for an emergency at the wall. It is a crisis. We have thousands and thousands of illegals coming in every week, and we also have more caravans coming up to cause more problem and possibly invade our country. It's an invasion. It's nothing more than that. And something's got to be done. And the weak-kneed Republicans are not standing up.
Well, they're going to get hurt, too. This country will eventually be overrun by foreigners, and we're going to be done.
Eventually? I don't like that word. It is already, Tony.
Well, all I got to say is keep your guns loaded.
All right. My dear friend, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Sir.
All right. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Let's do a weather forecast right now, and the weather is brought to you by some really, really nice people, and that's Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids, and they're right behind the Minidoka Hospital across from the emergency room, and the number to call, 312-0957. You know, there are so many factors about why you may be having hearing loss. I mean, it might have something to do with your weight, and it might have something to do that might be linked to heart disease or high blood pressure, whatever the case, diabetes. I urge you, if you're noticing a diminishment in your hearing, to call the professionals and make an appointment. Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids, the number to call, 312-0957. Right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Increasing clouds for today and expect some precipitation for later on this week. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Increasing clouds as we make our way through the day and into the afternoon and evening hours. High near 46. Winds out of the east at about 10 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 21 miles an hour. For tonight, we do have a 50% chance of rain and or snow showers before midnight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 33. By tomorrow, 70% chance of rain showers are likely. High of 49 and winds out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Rain showers tapering off for tomorrow night with a low of 33. Then we do have a slight chance of rain and or snow showers for Thursday, expecting a high of 49. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
And Gina, thank you very much. Very, very well done as always. And our thanks to our weather sponsor, Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And the number to call for a hearing screening appointment, 312-0957. Caller, thank you. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Zeb. You know, it's too bad, but it's been going on for a long time, even when I was back in college. You know, this liberal mindset, it's their way or the highway. And I mean, there's no compromise. There hasn't been for decades. I mean, they run a rule of roost, and if you don't go along with it, like these students, you know, and then finally there's some pushback. And look at this poor student out there in Berkeley, California. I guess they've arrested that student that punched that Leadership Institute young man. I mean, he came on TV on Hannity and had a black eye. I mean, that could have been a serious deal, but I guess he's been arrested, and he's going to press charges because that's the only thing they'll understand is if you have a bully like that.
All right, now wait a minute. Adrian, stop. I want to ask you a question. If the students at Gilbert, Arizona High School had on Obama shirts and Hope and everything else with Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, what would have happened?
Well, nothing.
There you go.
That's just it.
Yep.
And the whole thing is, you know, there isn't equal justice, there isn't due process left for people that believe in the Constitution. And, you know, everybody out there that is in public service taken off oath of office that they uphold the U.S. Constitution. And yet, you know, here we have a situation, Article 4, Section 4 says that, you know, they're to protect us against invasion. We've been invaded for decades, and it goes on. And so here we have President Trump that is like John Wayne. He's standing up, and we better stand behind him. And I think we are in a lot of ways, but the national media is just, you know, trying to destroy him.
That's right.
And students are you know, they really have their work cut out for them because most of these administrators have gone through these liberal colleges, and they're just trained little socialist leaders.
Well, let me again.
I think this is the wave of the future.
Let me again get in here and ask you something in the form of a statement and a question. Name one other president. One, just anybody that you can think of. One other president during one other administration where, if the general public bought a T-shirt or a sweatshirt honoring or giving homage to that administration, would they have been asked to take it off, or they would have been suspended from school?
No, it's all about taking out Trump, because Trump is fighting the New World Order. He's not part of the establishment and the elitists that want this one world government. And this is what's bad. Now, Trump has fallen prey to this Council on Foreign Relations guy that negotiated this new trade deal. It's really bad. I mean, this U.S. Canada-Mexico trade agreement is even worse than NAFTA. Now, you're not hearing that because all you're hearing is the apple pie, motherhood, and baseball, synopsis of it. But I can guarantee you, you get into the fine print like NAFTA, you find out you got a rotten deal going. It's basically, like one guy said, it's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and NAFTA combined in a lot of ways. In fact, the wording is almost identical to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Trump got us out of, rightfully. And now we see the U.S. Chamber of Commerce pushing this thing, and a big coalition of international companies. They want this because they want free, cheap labor in the U.S.
Yes.
And they don't want any tariffs, so they can move their factories or wherever. And they're not nationalists. They're not, and this is where Trump is. He puts America first. These international corporations, and I've worked for a couple of them, and I can guarantee you all they care about is the bottom line. They don't care where that takes place. They're not U.S. countries. They're international countries.
All right, now I'm going to get, let me, wait a minute. We can't have a one-sided conversation. I've got to get in here too, Adrian. Where are our Congressman Mike Simpson and all the others, whether it's Crapo, our senator, or Senator Risch? One question I asked earlier this hour is, and I'm going to ask you this and give me a short answer because I've got to go. Where are they? Why haven't they spoken out? There are so many issues that we as constituents need to hear about, whether it's Mike Simpson, whether it's Crapo on any issue, or whether it's Risch. I'm not hearing anything, and I keep calling their offices, and I keep getting the cricket sound. Well, we'll try to get them on crickets, but we'll see what their schedule is. I'm fed up with that attitude.
Yeah, well, and this is the whole problem. They get back there, I think in a lot of times they get Potomac River fever. Up here in Boise, they get Boise River fever too, because they get back there and they try to think they're doing the right thing, but they need to take the Constitution out and read it as to what they're supposed to be doing. And it's really sad, what's happened in this country in our lifetime. And you and I are about the same generation, and we've seen this degradation of this country ever since they took prayer and Bible reading out of public school in the early 60s.
I agree.
They brought in the Beatles and their yellow submarines. They brought in the methamphetamines. That's what a yellow submarine was.
Yeah, I got to run, Adrian.
Drug culture and all of these things. But, Zeb, we just have to hold their feet to the fire. Simpson is beholding to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He gets all his money. Nobody even ran against him last time. He gets all the money he wants because they want cheap, imported help to replace our people.
I appreciate your comments. I'm going to interrupt you. I got to run. I said a short answer, and I can't take a long dissertation, but I agree with everything you said. And you mentioned the Constitution, and don't give me a long story on this, but reading the Constitution, understanding it, knowing it, that's something I said yesterday, that everybody that's elected to political office should take a test. If they fail, discount the vote, throw them out.
Well, we had a townhouse meeting here in Twin Falls last Saturday morning, and that's what I said. The kids, they're all trained little socialists. I have a friend in the university here in Idaho, and they come in as freshmen, and they're all good little socialists. They all want to vote for Bernie Sanders because that's what they're being taught in our public schools in Idaho.
I got to run. We've got a huge problem with the left and socialism and the younger people, not all of them, but many of them, buying into that filth and garbage of socialism. Got to run. Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Keep up the fight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Don't forget a big spring tire sale going on at all 7 of your Magic Valley Les Schwab tire centers. Holy moly, listen to this. You can save up to $200 off of a set of 4 tires depending on the tire size and the type. Wow. And we're talking the best of their tires too, like the Ultra Z900. Holy moly. Or the Eclipse tire or the Open Country HT. All of this for your cars, pickups, SUVs. You'd better get in there today. And don't forget to the best of brake service and front end alignments and shocks and struts and batteries. They've got it all. They want you to drive safely and know that you've got the best for your vehicle. Stop into any one of the 7 locations: Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Daniel on Pole Line in Twin Falls, and Randy on Overland in Burley. They are the best at what they do. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All right, here we go. Next hour, Frosty Woldridge is going to be on our program at 9:06, and then we have a lady by the name of Christine Williams is going to be on the show at 9:30. Following that at 10 o'clock, Dr. History is going to be here. Always look forward to that. And then at 10:30 this morning, James Herson out of Hollywood. He's an attorney and also a political analyst, and we're looking forward to it. Let's see, what else have we got? We've got tomorrow on the program, we're hoping to get Brigitte Gabriel with Act for America to rebut the, I think, slanderous remarks that were written in a story in the Times News and the Idaho Statesman about her group, Act for America. We're going to have her hopefully on the air tomorrow, if we can make the connections with her schedule. We're going to turn it over to Wheels right now for about 7 minutes. Don't go away. Well, good morning and welcome back. Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with a great big spring tire sale going on right now. And don't forget some of our great advertisers like Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's have this good word for Western Waste Services.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're always at your disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this great land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal. Western Waste Services.
Always at your disposal, and I'll tell you what, you may be new to the area and you're going, what do I do with my garbage? Well, I know. Call them, get on the route service, and they'll have a truck there once a week to get your garbage. They are always at your disposal. Call them today, 734-6969, the best. Western Waste Services. You know, I'll tell you somebody else that's the best at what they do, and they do a job that you and I, we don't want to do. That's exactly right. We don't want to be out there pumping a septic tank, or we don't want to be involved in liquid waste removal or cleaning out sewer and sink drain lines. No. But I know somebody that does. Dino's Septic Service. And they've recently expanded their business to better serve more people that need their help. All you need to do is give them a call at 436-6526 or 678-1638. Fast, fair, friendly service. You better believe it. And the big truck that says smells cargo on the way. Dino's Septic Service. You call them right now. Before we go to our guest, I also want to remind you that when it comes to great personalities and people that you just really enjoy being around because they're smiling and they're knowledgeable and helpful, and that's, of course, I'm talking about Joel Heward, the manager of Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert. What a nice man, along with his family and his staff, serving you and your family in a time of need when there's a passing of a loved one, always with the highest ethical standards, with unquestioned integrity. And during such a difficult time, they want your expectations of service to be met and exceeded. And they will be. Hanson Mortuary, 710 6th Street in Rupert. Number to call, 436-5636. And Joel Heward also serving you at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. Right now, we're going to go to the phone line, and I got to compliment Frosty Woldridge on an article, a piece that he had written a week ago. We did not have a chance to get into it because of time constraints, but I want to compliment him on white privilege versus black privilege in America. It was extremely well done. It lays it out on the table in very simple and honest language about what is happening. We don't have to back up. We do not have to take anybody calling us racist for laying the facts on the table. And I say, great salutations to you for a wonderful job. Frosty Woldridge, good morning.
Good morning, Zeb. And the key here to this white privilege versus black privilege in America is that the reality is there is so much more black privilege. And I name those points off very, very succinctly in this well-researched article. And the fact is, racism in this country always is blamed on white people, when in reality, the racism around the world, whether you go to Japan, and I've lived in Japan, whether you go to Mexico, and I've traveled all over Mexico, racism abounds there. When you get to China, the Chinese really don't like anybody but themselves, and they're a mono-ethnic society. And here in the United States, whether you have somebody like LeBron James, who verbally has said, and I've watched the video of him, he doesn't hang with white dudes because he doesn't like white people.
Well, wait a minute. Stop a minute. Wait. Frosty, just a minute. Let me jump in here. Let me jump in on you there.
It's fascinating to see all this go on, and that white people become the victims, whether it's literally you've got the Black Caucus, you've got the Hispanic Caucus, you've got BET, which is Black Entertainment, you've got Blackish on TV, you've got Miss Black America. If you had, and then you have a man like Don Lemon on CNN saying that white men are the terrorists in this country. If any white host or anybody else created any of those organizations, they would be shut down with all sorts of consequences in a heartbeat. And yet Black America enjoys unbelievable leeway when it comes to racism.
Well, let me just jump in here for a minute, Frosty, and expand a little bit on LeBron James. Here is a basketball player. I mean, this is a guy that just barely got through high school, and then because of his athleticism and his great athletic ability, signed multi-million-dollar contracts to play basketball to make a living. All of a sudden, after his not going to college, but signing a great big NBA contract, which has made him one of the biggest and best stars ever in the history of the NBA, he's turned into a genius, and people listen to him. They follow him. They adhere to what he says. But yet what he says, as a black man, you and I as white people could never say. You were very kind in your remarks about what LeBron James said. He said, expletive, I don't play or want to be around blankety blank white people. If you and I said something like that about Barack Obama back in 2007, or even today, we would be absolutely blown off the air in 10 minutes.
Well, that's exactly correct. As a matter of fact, if you do look back at LeBron James, I'm almost really pretty sure that he did not graduate from high school, and in fact, he left high school for the NBA without graduating from high school. I'd have to do some more research on that, but I'm pretty sure that he didn't even complete high school. And then you have Laura Ingraham, really taking him to task that the American people elected Donald Trump to the presidency. They didn't elect somebody that can only shoot and dribble a basketball. And she said famously to shut up and dribble, because that's about the only thing he can do. He doesn't have any other skills. He certainly doesn't have an education. He certainly doesn't have any kind of a pretend college education. So he really is somebody who is quite privileged with all of his money, and his only, essentially his only calling card is he has tremendous athletic ability. And again, if he was living in Africa instead of America, his athletic ability would probably be hauling water in a hut in somewhere in the Sudan, because Africa is such a nightmare right now of starvation, of overpopulation, of human degradation, and anything and everything else you can imagine, because all of Africa is not doing too well. And so really in the end, that young man, or I guess he's 35 right now, should be thanking his lucky stars that he's an American.
Yeah, but wait
family lives in this country.
Wait a minute, Frost. Here it is, a situation that I think we need to expand upon a little bit. Here's a kid that, when he was in high school, was not exactly your phenom when it came to opening up math books or biology books. But he had a gift. He had an athletic gift to play basketball, and now has made multi-millions of dollars playing a sport that he is, and I'll acknowledge this, probably one of or the best of his era. However, how do you go about condemning white people, whether they are ticket purchasers to go watch him at stadiums around the United States, or whether they are negotiators for contracts, or whether they are owners of teams? How do you condemn and get away with it by being a racist on the reverse side, a black racist, and nobody calls him out?
Well, and that's pretty much what's going on. I mean, Don Lemon of CNN, obviously racist. I mean, he is a racist. I mean, flat out has shown he's a racist. He's spoken as a racist, and he gets away with it. And that's why I bring this out in this black privilege versus white privilege. There's no way that white people would get away with a TV program that's whitish. There's no way that you would have WET, which would be white entertainment television. There's no way you could have a Miss White America. You certainly couldn't have a white college fund. I mean, you can't have a white caucus in the Congress. You can't do anything like that in this country because you would absolutely be bludgeoned in the court of public opinion. Run by, the individuals who literally start screaming about that, such as Maxine Waters or a man like Hank Johnson or Elijah Cummings, or we can just go right on down the line. So it really does show you that black people can be absolutely racist beyond measure, but they never, ever are called on it, and certainly don't have any consequences from it.
Well, the thing that gets me so mad, and I'm irate over this situation right now as we talk about it, is the money, the privilege, and what is afforded to these people, and they're not thankful. They don't care about the United States. Many of the NBA players right now are contemplating taking a knee during the national anthem. They are overpaid prima donnas that don't realize that they would never make that kind of money playing basketball for any other country, but yet they will take a knee against our red, white, and blue. It drives me insane.
Well, it certainly is unfortunate because it shows you a loss and or lack of the comprehension of their extraordinary good fortune to be born in America. This is the most successful society on the face of the planet for all races and colors and ethnic groups, bar none. There's no other country in the world that has this extraordinary opportunity for every person of every color and every ethnic group and every race. And so, at some point, as we continue to add, and I just gave a big speech just last week here in Denver called "The Perfect Storm Gathering Over America," and I talked about the fact, and I've talked on this show, we're about to add 100 million more third world immigrants into the United States, another 10 to 20 million more Muslims into the United States, and that's one of my, in fact, Part 6, you can all go to News with Views or CapitolHillOutsider.com and see Part 6 of The Strange Death of Europe and the unbelievable terror that's coming into Europe right now, and the rapes and the killings and the knifings caused by all of these Africans and these Middle Eastern Muslims and these Asians that are coming in, because they're literally creating a complete anarchy throughout all of Europe. Well, that's the same thing as coming into America, folks, and that's why I have, for the last 3 solid years now, called for a complete shutdown on all immigration, because if we don't shut down immigration, we're going to follow in the footsteps, again, 100 million more third world immigrants into the United States within the next 31 years. I don't see how we're going to survive that, Zeb.
Okay, I want you to do something for me and explain something to me. And Wheels, we got a little bit of feedback here, but I want you, Frosty Woolridge, to take about 30 seconds and give me your definition of white privilege and why or how you and I have benefited from so-called white privilege?
Well, I know that as a white person, ever since I came off the farm in Michigan and then worked my way through college, working as a bouncer and a waiter, working as a lifeguard, working as a dishwasher, working heavy equipment, moving furniture, and then working all the way through college, and then out of college into the United States Army as a lieutenant, out of the Army, then a cardiac catheterization med tech, making $2.37 an hour. I made $2.37 an hour as a cardiac cath tech at Butterworth Hospital, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then from there, I became a teacher, a math and science teacher, and I was making $5,000 a year. $5,000 a year, folks. That's all I made. I was so poor I lived in a 250-square-foot apartment along with another Vietnam War vet named Bruce that I remember so fondly. He came out alive and in one piece. So if you think that was white privilege, making $5,000 a year, I was so poor I couldn't buy a house, I couldn't buy a car. I bought a $275 Ford Galaxy. And then from there, I got so tired of being poor that I became a truck driver. And as a truck driver, and anybody that's on this broadcast knows, as a furniture truck driver, I worked furniture. I worked like a dog. I worked 100 hours a week. I didn't even put down the extra 30, so it was always volunteer 30 hours of work because you only can get 70 hours on your logs. And so if that's a lot of white privilege, I don't know how could I be called white privilege when I've worked my tail feathers off my whole life, because that's what I was the rest of my life, a career truck driver, because I made a decent living at it instead of the poverty of a teacher. So,
well, the whole thing boils down to this.
I'll own it. I worked my tail feathers off.
The whole thing boils down to this. We both know each other very well. We both had to work for what we've achieved and attained in our life. And I have worked very hard to develop a personality and a career that has been acceptable in the communications business, and I've had a chance to make some good money out of it. But nobody gave it to me. Nobody gave me the books and gave me an A on every test just because of white privilege. Nobody gave me legs that I didn't have as a younger person because of polio. I had to overcome that, and I'm sick and tired of listening to these crybaby wimps that say white privilege, and I'm not going to give them any credence whatsoever.
Well, and I would agree, because everyone, I don't care who you are or where you came from or whatever, you choose your life. You choose to stay in high school, K through 18, or you choose to drop out. It's a choice. If you drop out, you then are putting yourself on the lowest rung of the ladder. And the fact is, Black America has well over a 50 to 60% flunk-out dropout rate out of high schools. And even the ones that pass, that actually gain a high school diploma, it's such a poor quality these days because everybody wants to give affirmative action. And affirmative action, in the end, is not affirmative action. It's crippling. Affirmative action cripples anyone and everyone who falls under that kind of a mandate because it means you don't have to stand up and you don't have to study and you don't have to accrue, if you will, the standards that it takes to pass a test in biology or zoology or history or calculus or mathematics of any kind, algebra 2. It means that you get a free pass and a job called affirmative action where you are not qualified because you didn't do the work. And that would happen if you were black, white, brown, or red. And so in the end, it's really up to each individual in America to make the choice to stay in school and do well, not do poorly and not do goof off, but to do well by hard work and hard study. That would give you all sorts of privileges, but only you can define and only you can perform. And once you do, there are millions of very successful black, white, brown, red persons in the United States of America, whereas if they were back in their home countries, they would be starving to death, or they would living on a very marginal life. So this black privilege stuff, white privilege stuff, I'm sorry. It's just an excuse to complain and or an excuse to do poorly and think that you're going to win the game of life. You won't. In the end, it's hard work, it's study, it's education, it's learning a tech, vocational tech, it's learning a trade to participate and flourish in the United States of America. And everybody has that right from their birthright.
Well, it's not just some intellectually challenged athlete like LeBron James that is not the brightest star or light in the fixture. It's also people like Oprah Winfrey. When in your article you gave a quote, and I want to read that quote, she said in 2013 that older people who were born and bred and marinated in racism have to die before racism can be solved. That really hit home to me because I don't like somebody wagging a finger at me saying, go away and die, white man, so we can take over and we can prove our point.
Well, there's no question Oprah Winfrey is a racist herself, making that kind of a comment. Can you imagine if somebody like Jeff Glor there on CBS News said the same thing? He would be fired in a heartbeat. He'd be tossed off the air. It's like that Roseanne Barr lady. She said one simple little thing,
yeah,
and she got tossed off an entire successful TV program, whatever that program was. And so you see, there's one-sided black privilege versus this mythical white privilege. And again, I also made it very clear in this article that in South Africa, they shoot white people just because they're white.
That's right.
They're actually trying, the South Africans right now are doing everything they can to run the white South Africans, and there's about 4 million of them, completely out of South Africa. And a lot of the smart South Africans are moving to Australia, or they're moving to the United Kingdom, or they're trying to get over here to the United States because they can see the writing on the walls. And so what that means is the tragedy is the races don't do so very well together. And the only way that the United States is going to survive is if all these races that have mixed into America start respecting one another and start living with one another and doing the best they can, working with each other. And again, the key here is respect. And people like Oprah Winfrey or somebody like LeBron James, they're inflaming all the black people by making such unbelievable statements of racial conflict and certainly racism in itself. And that's we certainly don't need that. And here I am. I'm a national journalist. I have millions of readers. And what I always try to do, and I think I succeed in it, is I give the facts. And I give equal credence to every black person in this country, every white person, every brown person, every Hispanic, every Asian, because I know that every one of us is doing the best we can. And we don't need somebody like me making some kind of a racial conflictual kind of comment. And you won't hear it from me. I'll state the facts, but I will not be a racist of any kind.
Absolutely. I want to compliment you again on, I'm going to hold this article in my file, and I know we're going to be talking about this in the future. Frosty Woolridge, I'm out of time. God bless you, man, back in Golden, Colorado. My dear friend, we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you so much.
And God bless, and the very best, Evan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Always appreciate his very open and candid remarks, and I agree with him. Thank you very much, Frosty Woolridge. Don't forget, on Mondays at 10:30, we have the Idaho Legislative Update while they're in session, and it's brought to you by Handy Truck Lines, 400 West, 100 South of Paul. And believe me, a very dependable, honest carrier, partnered with many similar carriers to satisfy all your transportation needs. Handy Truck Lines, bringing you on Zeb at the Ranch, the 2019 Legislative Update. Thank you very much. Want to also acknowledge right now, while I've got the time, a big thank you and a shout out to our friends at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. Hello, Jeff and the crew. Holy cow, they've got brand new arrivals of carpet and vinyl flooring and planks. You name it, Lee's Furniture has it. And don't forget, they've got a huge special on mattresses, 50 to 75% off. You'd better get in there today. They're having everything in the stores on sale, between 25 and 40% off chairs, power recliners, all of this and more. You'd better get in there today. Where? 459 Overland in Burley. Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. You tell Jeff I sent you in. Really good people. By the way, too, I want to also say I'm hurrying here so I can get to my next guest. I also want to give a great big shout-out and a thank you to our friends over at Let's Ride. You know, all winter we talked about the snowmobiles. Well, right now it's time to think spring. And if you already have four-wheelers, you need to get them serviced and ready to go so you can get outside in the spring and the summer. You better take them over there. They've got a wonderful service department serving you. At Let's Ride, 270 Highway 24, between Rupert and the World. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturdays, 9 to 4, and all the showroom is full of four-wheelers. If you don't have one, stop over, check out the four-wheelers, all the accessories, everything for fun, because this is where the fun is sold at Let's Ride. I really am anxious to have this next lady on the program, and I think I've had her on the show maybe about a year ago. I can't remember. But she's got a brand new book out called The Challenge of Modernizing Islam. And I'm not going to read too much into that title until we hear it from her. Good morning, Christine Douglas Williams. How are you?
Good morning, Jeb. I'm doing fine, and how are you doing?
Well, I'm really good, and I've been blessed, but I want to ask you about this book. I'm going to sit back and let you give me a little synopsis of this book, but before you do that, I want to let you know, Christine, that I am a person that is very tainted and very prejudiced against Islam and the purports of maybe having Sharia law and other atrocities come into this country. So that being said, tell me about your book.
Perhaps we could have a competition about being tainted. I was fired by the government of Canada for criticizing political Islam. So I'll begin now by telling you a little bit about what this book in fact, I'll talk about its aim, first of all. The aim of this book is quite simple in my estimation as author. It is meant to support the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the right of an individual to practice their faith, period. However, with that being said, this does not mean that a person's faith or ideology or belief trumps Western constitutions built on Judeo-Christian democracies, on values of equal rights for all. The book that I've written, The Challenge of Modernizing Islam, the first part of the book contains interviews with moderates. And I have to say there's a difference between moderates and reformists. Reformists believe that they can get in there and provide alternatives to what the ulema version of Islam means. In other words, let me try to simplify this very complex issue. When people ask me straightforward, is Islam a religion of peace? I say off the bat, according to Islamic jurisprudence globally, the Islamic fiqh, which is the jurisprudence, Islam is not a religion of peace because according to Islam, the world is divided into the house of war, the house of Islam. The house of Islam is considered the right one, and the house of war is considered the countries that are not subjugated under Islam and they have not converted to Islam, or they're not simply dhimmis, as we saw under the Ottoman Empire, where there was an inferior status for infidels. Plain and simple. All schools of Islamic jurisprudence are what they are, and I challenge anyone that wants to question that and question me about it or you about it, who you said you were tainted, let them go and discuss this very issue with the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar University in Cairo. Let them discuss it with the ulama, with the mullahs, with the Ayatollah. Let them go ahead and do that. They won't get very far doing it. And throw in the Muslim Brotherhood while you're at it. So Islam, according to its jurisprudence, is what it is. But it does not mean that there hasn't been a movement from within. And this movement has gone on hundreds of years, saying, look, why can't we live peaceably among other people? When we look at our Islamic doctrine and we look at the hadith that was written 200 years, this is what they'll say, 200 years after Muhammad's death. It was an oral tradition that eventually became a written tradition long after the caliphs had already gone on their violent rampages establishing Islam throughout many regions. So it is what it is in terms of its doctrine. But we've had this movement from within who wanted to practice Islam in peace and get along with other people. Unfortunately, throughout history, they've been killed as apostates. We still see groups within Islam, like the Ahmadiyyas. If every Muslim was an Ahmadiyya, you would not have this problem because they do practice their religion in peace. But the problem with the Ahmadiyyas is that they say Islam is the religion of peace in accordance with how they practice it when they're only 1% of the world population and they're not even regarded as Muslims. So they're persecuted as Christians are, and they're killed internationally by their co-religionists who practice the real what Islam is, according to the Islamic fiqh. So in a nutshell, we cannot change the Islamic fiqh in terms of how it is interpreted and what it is internationally. There's a turf war, a violent one, if you will, going on within Islam that unfortunately, I say, has landed on our soil. So with these interviewees that I've had in the book, they talk about what the problems are that a lot of Westerners just are not familiar with. They even go into the personal aspect of their faith and how they reconcile being Muslims with pushing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, believing in Western democracy, and in fact even rejecting the tenets of the Sharia from the point of view of they want to have nothing to do with it in terms of its establishment on Western soil. And we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing a two-tier system. We're seeing Sharia courts in Britain, which these moderates that I've interviewed do not transcribe to. We're seeing Islamophobia, that word that keeps popping up everywhere, that doesn't just mean anti-Muslim bigotry. It also means hurting Muslims' feelings or having feelings of hatred or dislike of Muslimness, whatever that means. So basically what they're ascribing to is the Sharia law, where they, above anybody else, are above criticism and they must not be scrutinized. So in a nutshell, I recognize religious rights and freedoms. I was once in the Office of Religious Freedoms as an external advisor under the previous Harper government. I recognize that for everybody because it is consistent with equal rights under the law. Beyond that, the turf war that is going on within Islam should never have arrived on our soil, and we need to take responsibility for that because we allowed it to happen.
Why is there, Christine, such a naivete of the American public, and quite frankly, I'll be more definitive, of American politics? Why are they so protective of Islam? Why are they so protective of Muslims and their culture over and above our practices of Judeo-Christian policies and especially Christianity in this country? Christianity seems to be being pushed to the back of the bus.
Why is a loaded question, and why has many layers. Part of that answer to why has to do with leaderships that we're seeing. We're seeing a global entity. They call them globalists. George Soros is the name that keeps coming up, but believe me, he is not acting alone. We're seeing a whole bunch of individuals. Some refer to them as the new Marxists of today. It's a socialist drive that seeks to usurp Judeo-Christian democracy, basically bring it down, because if one looks at dictatorships and damaging ideologies throughout history, like Marxism, like Stalinism, the various forms of communism and Nazism, one thing is very clear. Humans cannot, the people that they govern do not have free thought, do not have freedom of expression. In fact, what goes on there is that before these systems can become in power, they need to destroy the previous system, create an anarchy so that they can come in with solutions. They call them solutions. They create a catastrophe, they create anarchy, and then they say, look, we have the solution. So here we have a guy like George Soros and other globalists saying, we're the ones that would provide the solution. In fact, they've gone so far as to accuse the Visegrad group in Europe. These are the so-called populists, the countries that want to stand behind Judeo-Christian democracy, that want to protect democracy. The group consists of only 4 countries, and that's Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. We've seen Austria come on board to support the Visegrad group. We've also seen Italy. These are the holders of genuine democracy and genuine human rights. So right there we're seeing the powers that are struggling on top, because they're coming in with a kind of communism, with something that seeks to globalize the world into one unit, one fake utopia, because they try to make it look like it's a utopia where everybody can get along. And of course we know that's not true. They're not reinventing the wheel here. This has happened throughout history with catastrophic outcomes. So that's one aspect. Another one is the guilt that we hear about, the white guilt, where people say, look, we have been sinners in the past. We have been the colonialists. We held black slaves. We have established our presence in countries that didn't welcome us. But they don't stop to think, look, people grow. Western democracies no longer ascribe to any kind of colonialism, even though they try to say Zionism is colonialism, and that's another hogwash. That is a load of it that takes another talk show that actually I have done discussions about. But the point of the matter is here, you're looking at people who are believing that we have done so much wrong in the past that it's now time for the brown people and the black people to get a leg up in life because of how we've crushed them, which is baloney, because every group has been oppressed by other groups. You look at the Chinese and the Japanese. You look at the Holocaust, for goodness sakes. We don't see that among the Jewish people. They have gone above that. They have built themselves. They don't ascribe to the victimology subterfuge, which is what I call it. So you have this other group that believes that, but they don't come out and recognize blacks are still being held slaves today by Arabs. We see it in Muslim countries like Algeria, Mauritania, Sudan, but we don't somehow see them come out and do that. They're too busy looking at themselves. It's like an egocentrism that says, okay, we've done all this wrong in the past, therefore we have to erase it and give anybody who wants to come in a leg upon life and help them. But they're not helping anybody. They're being used, they're being taken advantage of, and in fact the biggest victims within Islam are the very Muslims themselves when you look at the 11 million that were murdered since 1948 for not being Muslim enough. It is a system where a great battle is being waged within Islam, and unfortunately, we in the West have chosen to take on that battle. And then you have another group that belongs to the so-called anti-racism industry. They're getting paid for this. This is an industry that ascribes to, look at the age of Eurocentrism, white privilege, and so forth. But they do not stop to consider the victims of Islamic supremacy, the victims that are getting acid thrown in their faces for trying to get an education, the victims across the board, the Christians who are being persecuted throughout Islamic states, the gays that are being thrown over balconies. What about the apostates and the infidels? What about the women across Europe that have gotten raped? These are all victims, piled upon victims, daily in large numbers, but they choose to turn a blind eye because they care about their daily lives and how they can show themselves to be the virtue signalers, the people that are kind and helping those poor barbarians that somehow cannot come out of their way of life, victimizing people because of all the pain that we have caused them, which again is hogwash. 1,400 years of jihad was way before colonialism ever began. So you've got many layers that is perpetuating this lie, from the powerhouses to the charlatans to those that are self-hating because of all the past wrongs of the colonialists.
Let me ask you this, and it's a current news story which really kind of dovetails right into your book, The Challenge of Modernizing Islam. Let's talk a little bit about the ISIS bride from Alabama that went to the Middle East and was an advocate of beheadings and killings, had 3 different ISIS husbands, and now the poor little girl says she's had an epiphany and she wants to come back to the United States. I have said on my program a resounding no. The closest I want her to come to the United States is to have a cell for the rest of her life in Guantanamo Bay. What are your thoughts?
I am in agreement with you 100%. One of the biggest problems I see in Western society, and in fact, I was on the board of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, which was in the Department of Heritage in Canada, It was once with citizenship and immigration, so I do understand a lot of cultural issues by way of my own heritage, but also by way of the work that I've done. One thing that I've noticed is that every single culture, none is exempt, has its own flaws in terms of its worldviews. There's positive and there's also negative. One of the big negatives that I see with the Western worldview is that they tend to think that other people think as they do. For instance, let me give you an example using the same girl that you're mentioning here, who is actually a monster. We cannot get it out of our psyche and out of our minds that this poor young girl is suffering. She can't not be suffering because, after all, she's a woman. She's a visible minority. She was taken advantage of. She was abused. We have this model of female abuse that we see in our own society that we try to perpetuate on others and think, well, that's the way they think. We cannot conjure up in our own minds that we're being fooled. The Muslim Brotherhood has been using the victimology subterfuge for some time because they understand weakness. They understand how to play weakness. If you want to call somebody that ridiculous word Islamophobes, well then call China a bunch of Islamophobes with how they're treating the Uyghurs. But no, it's the Westerners they focus on because they see weakness. This girl has sat in rooms and she has expressed having no regrets when it comes to beheadings, when it comes to abuse. The ISIS brides, if anybody even takes the time to do a little bit of research, will realize that they were directly involved in holding Yazidi slaves in their own household, helping them get raped by these brute men, whipping them with cords, abusing them upon abusing them, and they had absolutely no problem doing it. And when things don't work out quite as well as they thought they would, because ISIS was overcome, not completely, by the forces of the West and the NATO forces and so on, then they come out and say, oh, I want to come back home. I'm a citizen. Poor me, poor me. I'm just this innocent girl. They would kill you in a moment because they are indoctrinated with a belief that tells them that apostates and infidels are inferior, that women who are uncovered deserve to be abused. This is what they're indoctrinated with. They are warped. They're psychotic. When I say psychotic, I don't mean mental illness type of psychotic that needs treatment. There's no treatment for somebody that's willfully committing these kinds of atrocities against the human race. If one could actually see on a screen what this girl was involved in, how she facilitated it, their thinking might change. They'll get sick to their stomachs, first of all, and next of all, they'll think, well, obviously, I had little understanding of some of these other cultures. I was busy judging other cultures by my own culture, which is in a way a sense of egoism, where one says, look, everybody else has to be like me. There's no evil in this world. Just because they didn't witness it or their children didn't fall victims of it does not mean that other people and children, those Yazidi children who suffered, the families who were torn apart, people don't seem to care about them. They're putting more emphasis into this monstrous girl because she happens to look like somebody in need of help. I find it appalling, and I blame the Western thinking for that, particularly the leadership.
When you were putting this book together, and believe me, after looking at all the different categories and topics that we could discuss, when you wrote the book, as you were writing the various chapters, what hit you the most and made you sit back and go, oh my goodness, in almost a fearful state? What bothered you the most about some of the facts that you found out?
What bothered me the most was the lack of knowledge of Westerners. And it started long before I wrote the book. In fact, those very aspects of the horror that I see happening right before me and before you as well, because you obviously recognize the problem on our soil, what bothered me was the lack of understanding. And those were the troubling aspects that caused me, the motivators that caused me to write the book in the first place. Because the Muslims that are highlighted in the book, and particularly there are a couple of them that appeal to me, and this is just my own view. You may read the book, somebody else may read the book, and they'll have their own people that they see that perhaps resonated with them more. But Dr. Sheikh Subi Mansour, who is the founder of the Quranist sect in Egypt, he understands it from A to Z Okay, we say Z in Canada, ZZ. That's an argument across the border. But anyway, this fellow was the founder of the Quranic sect in Egypt. He was actually an Al-Azhar man. He taught at Al-Azhar University. He knew Sisi and does not believe in the ways, because Sisi, he says, plays both sides with the Muslim Brotherhood and his pretending about trying to help Christians and democracy and so forth. That's another story. But this guy appealed to me because he's seen it, he understands the doctrine, he's worked there. He was eventually thrown out of Al-Azhar because of his belief in reform, and he's trying to break up the ulama in terms of this rigid form of Islam and this other reform toward Wahhabism toward the 7th century of Muhammad that we see happening in the other direction of reform. So he was against that, was thrown out, was eventually thrown in jail, and eventually exiled from Egypt, where he now lives in the United States. I found him very interesting with what he talked about, the suffering that him and his friends and his folk that believe in reform and the Quranic sect suffered as a result of simply saying, look, we don't want to ascribe to this brand of Islam that has been traditional. Another one is Dr. Tawfiq Hamid with the Potomac Institute for Policy Studies, who was once with Al-Qaeda. He emphasizes Arab pride and what it means. He comes right out in the book and says, Westerners, you guys just don't understand. They will kill you however they do it. They'll use chemical weapons if they can do it. They will use biological weapons if they can. They'll run you over. They'll blow you up. They'll shoot you. They'll do anything because you cannot possibly understand the hatred that he saw up close and personal. He talks about the hatred and the root of it in Arab pride as well. He's insulting the way he sounds in it for that very reason. And another thing, actually, that I want to mention, so those two provided a bit of a difference because they got me to understand the level of the hatred and what can be done. And as Dr. Sheikh Subi Mansour put it, if you want to be talking about insulting Islam and and bringing that onto the West and applying punitive measures for insulting Islam, and talking about this insult, well then maybe you should be criticizing Bukhari, which is the Hadith. Because he talks about what the Bukhari preaches and talks about Muhammad with Aisha and basically what sex abuse, child abuse. This is what he's talking about here. He's saying, well, if that is what the book is saying, if that is what these holy books are saying, well, then they should be up on charges because these are against the law. These are law breaking according to Western standards. So why are we not indicting them? But I wouldn't go quite there because I say what they want to believe in their own countries, that's perfectly fine, but don't bring it into the West. Don't tolerate it into the West. Don't tolerate it in the West. And for goodness sakes, bring it out into the light for scrutiny to give people, naive people, understanding as to what this is about. Just because it happens to be, and this is the crux of it, what I'm trying to get across, it happens to be the doctrine, the hard doctrine of the Islamic faith does not mean that there are other Muslim believers who are just following it in a cultural fashion, or other ones who want to be more like the Ahmadiyas and say, look, we don't want to do this. We don't ascribe to this kind of behavior. It's their right, but do not try to change the Western Constitution. And I blame our leaders, and it's time we speak out louder about this and fight this more and stop leaving that fight. Even the Muslims in the book, there are people that say, oh, they're the ones that have to tell us how to practice what we're practicing here, how to be able to interpret Islam. We don't need to know about Buddhism. It's not necessary. Let's put it this way. It's important for authorities to understand the truth. But if whether or not we know about Buddhism, we know about Hinduism, we know about Islam or any religion is beside the point when it comes to the Constitution. I don't care if you worship a light bulb, but do it in peace and obey the Constitution. I don't need to find out the ins and outs of the light bulb that somebody chooses to worship. The point of the matter is we have allowed one group that we try to say, society at large, well, if you happen to want to put that group under scrutiny, well, then you're Islamophobic. No. The issue is not being anti-Muslim. I have not met, personally, people who are genuinely anti-Muslim and they don't want Muslims to come, period. It's the behavior they're seeing.
Absolutely.
It's the drive to try to overtake our countries. That is the problem and commit harm to our people.
Christine, please, I've only got 30 seconds left. Tell me and my audience, I've got to get a copy of this book. I've got to have you back on after I read the book, The Challenge of Modernizing Islam. Where can they find this book?
Every major bookstore, and if it's not on the shelf, if you tell them you'd want it and just give the title, they'll be able to get it for you. So it's in every bookstore.
I certainly hope you'll come back in the future. God bless you, Christine Douglas Williams. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chad.
I appreciate it, man. I tell you what, this book, The Challenge of Modernizing Islam, I'm going to get it. read it, and have her back on the air within the next couple of weeks. She tells it like it is and doesn't cover it up, doesn't put a ribbon around it. I really appreciate her. Christine Douglas Williams. Holy cow, it's time for the weather. Wheels is saying, you better hurry, Zeb. The weather's brought to you by Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. Hello, how you doing over there? Great folks providing professional accounting services to the Mini-Cash area for well over 50 years. Matter of fact, I talked to my good friend Lyden Crane yesterday over there. The very best of tax return preparation, tax planning, business consulting, bookkeeping services, retirement planning, all of this and so much more for you, your family, and your business. Please remember they have 2 locations to serve you in Burley and Rupert. They are the best at what they do. Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Increasing clouds for today and expect some precipitation for later on this week. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Increasing clouds as we make our way through the day and into the afternoon and evening hours. High near 46. Winds out of the east at about 10 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 21 miles an hour. For tonight, we do have a 50% chance of rain and or snow showers before midnight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 33. By tomorrow, 70% chance of rain showers are likely. High of 49 and winds out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Rain showers tapering off for tomorrow night with a low of 33. Then we do have a slight chance of rain and or snow showers for Thursday, expecting a high of 49. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Range.
Gina, thank you very much, and brought to you by the best, the real professionals in accounting, and that's, of course, Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. Offices in Burley and Rupert, and believe me, if you've got questions about maybe starting a business or a partnership or a corporation or maybe expanding your business, hiring more employees, please give them a call. Phillips Oaks Goodwin Crane and Company. Losing my voice here a little bit this morning. Apologize for that. But right now we also want to say that coming up at 10 o'clock, don't forget, 10:06 actually, Dr. History. He just walked into the house. He'll be on at 10:06. Don't forget our dear friends at Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Hello, they do a great job serving you. Very accessible and devoted to serving others. And believe me, they've got the best of life insurance and help with those policies and maybe making sure that everything is covered for you, your family, and your business, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this and so much more. All you have to do is just give them a call. 436-4424. That number again, 436-4424. Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Really, really good people. Well, I have just a quick moment here. Excuse me. Tomorrow on the program, Ash Wednesday, as a matter of fact, Dave Bego's going to be on the air. We are trying to solidify the 10:06 time of having Brigitte Gabriel on the phone. Deanne's working on that right now as we speak, as a matter of fact, and hopefully I can let you know yes or no before the end of the program. We're going to take a little break. Dr. History is going to come in here and pick up the microphone for the next half hour, and of course, you're listening to Zeb at the Ranch on a Tuesday, March 5th. Don't go away. Oh, I tell you what, we're right on top of it. Almost. Morning, everybody. Zeb at the Ranch, hour number 3. And in just a moment, we're going to have my dear friend, Dr. History, on the program. I want to remind you that, hey, if you've got a little money coming back on your taxes, kind of a tax refund, why don't you spend it on you and what you've wanted for a long time? Maybe a brand new TV from maybe Samsung or Sony or Toshiba, or maybe you're looking at a home theater system to where you can sit in your lazy boy and kind of have popcorn and enjoy all the movies and everything. Oh my goodness, it's all at Patterson's at 421 East Main in Burley. Curtis and Lorena, the whole staff serving you. They're open Monday through Saturday 9 to 6. And again, they're located at 421 East Main in Burley. Take that tax refund and enjoy your money at Patterson's, 421 East Main in Burley. Well, we say a good morning. Sometimes you and I, behind the scenes, and I'm glad I don't have the cameras rolling all the time. We get to talking and forget the business of the day, don't we? Good morning, Dr.
Good morning, Zeb.
How are you?
I'm good. Little cold wind out there today, but hey, it's spring. We're all right.
Yeah. Last week we talked about where I was actually in Arizona,
right?
And I wanted to find out where are we headed this week.
We're going to go to Texas.
Oh my goodness! What part?
Well, you'll just have to listen because we're going to start in Texas. Okay. Let me put it that way. How's that?
All right.
Okay. So the great cattle drives from Texas north, across the plains, produced one of the nation's most endearing folk heroes. The cowboy.
Yeah, the birth of the cowboy.
His sombrero, his lariat, mounted on a half-broke Mustang that probably half the time bucked him off.
Which weren't half-broke most of the time.
That's right. But, in the era of the long drives from the 1860s to the 1890s, the cowboy was a legendary figure. I mean, a glamorous guy.
And still is today.
Yes, yeah.
You know what? I learned this when I did the Olympics in 1996. The American cowboy, the cowboy hat and the boots and everything is revered, and everybody wants to be around a cowboy.
Oh, yeah. Why wouldn't you? I mean, but trailing cattle was not new, actually. Americans had, quote, walked cattle to market for more than 2 centuries. Although the herds were small, they were easily handled by men on foot. A boy led a belled ox down the road, and the cattle followed. In other words, folks, a belled ox would be an ox with a bell around his neck.
That's kind of like the Democratic Party with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, a few men on foot brought up the rear to keep them from straying, and they traveled through farming country and placed the cattle in fenced pastures each night. There was no need for night herding, no danger of stampedes. Fat cattle had been walked from Springfield, Massachusetts to Boston as early as the 1650s. By the early 19th century, cattle were regularly driven from the Ohio Valley to markets as far away as New York City. So, again, you think of that, there's nothing really glamorous or captivating about these early cattle drives or the men that made them. Wasn't really all that exciting. But, as the hide hunters decimated the buffalo herds in the next decade, there were millions of longhorns from South Texas that would take their places. Now, other cattle entered the northern plains from Oregon and Utah, and, farm cattle were shipped from states east of the Mississippi River, and the brief era of the open range and the free grass generated probably the greatest cattle boom in world history. So, as we get into this, the age of the great cattle drives was one where there's a lot of changes in American life.
And it was really a short period of time.
It really was.
Yeah.
Now, Eastern factories developed or enlarged during the Civil War. They supported a growing population and contributed to the demand for beef.
Yeah.
More and more people wanted beef.
Yeah.
Now, the railroads pushing west across the plains, they eventually provided transportation for the live cattle to the packing plants in Chicago, St. Louis, and then once they got refrigerated rail cars and ships introduced, then the dressed beef cattle could be hauled really across the Atlantic in the 1870s.
When did that start? Do you know?
About the 1870s is what it's saying.
Refrigerated?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It surprised me.
Yeah.
But the invention that had the most revolutionary impact on the cattle kingdom was the barbed wire. Mm-hmm. And us folks out here, we call it bobbed.
And it caused a lot of trouble. It
was actually invented in the 1870s, and in 1876, one of the skeptical Texas cowmen in San Antonio, he wondered if that wire would hold the longhorns.
Yeah.
Would it really hold them in? Well, anyway, after that age of the pioneer cowman was kind of doomed. The wise cowmen began buying land by the section and enclosing it with barbed wire. And the severe drought of 1883 forced many cowmen to seek other grass and water. When they found fences in their way, they got kind of mad about that. And there was actually a fence war that raged off and on for several years before the Texas Rangers put an end to fence cutting.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, most states and territories back in the 1860s and 70s, whether it was Kansas or whether it was Wyoming or Texas or whatever, there were a lot of battles fought over
There
that.
was, yeah. In fact, in 1879, fencing became a problem in Wyoming for the big outfits. In 1883, the Secretary of the Interior authorized settlers, now get this, Ed, settlers, to destroy fences that were in their way to land that they wanted to homestead.
And that caused a lot of
Even more
problems.
problems,
Yeah, really.
And 2 years later, Congress outlawed fences on federal lands, and President Grover Cleveland ordered them removed. I don't quite understand that, but
Yeah.
the northern ranchers gradually purchased and fenced the ranges, although the free grass era lasted longer in parts of Montana. I mean, you've been through Montana, big sky country, obviously. But the six-shooter and the repeating rifle were inventions that helped convert the central and northern grasslands from the buffalo range of the Plains Indians to a major part of the cattle kingdom because of killing off the buffalo.
Right.
So, anyway, the rapid spread of the cattle ranges occurred as millions of surplus animals were herded north from Texas. The oldest of the northern routes was the Shawnee Trail from San Antonio past Austin, Waco, and Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the routes which followed most of the stock cattle reached the northern ranges were on the Chisholm Trail to central Kansas and the later Western Trail to Dodge City. And of all the Texas cattle routes, the Chisholm Trail was the most used and by far the best known. And its name, and now this may surprise some people, its name came from Scott Cherokee Indian trader Jesse Chisholm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who in 1865 began hauling trade goods in wagons from his post near the future site of Wichita, Kansas, to Indian camps about 220 miles to the south, and other parts of the trail were at first called by various names, but Texas trailmen soon applied Chisholm's name to the entire route from San Antonio to Abilene and later Kansas shipping points.
I have a question.
Okay.
How many times during the course of the year, because of the weather, could they have trail drives on any respective trail? And the reason I ask that question to you is that the first one that gets a chance to go gets all the grass.
Exactly.
And the damage left by when you got 4,000 or 5,000 head of cattle, you're going to have a lot of damage to the grass, etc. And how many times during the course of the year could herds go up these respective trails? I'm thinking I've heard no more than 3.
I would guess, I'm going to say 2 most of the time,
Yeah.
maybe 3. But I'm going to give you folks a map of the trails. Okay, so we're going to start. If you can picture in your mind, central United States, starting in Texas. Okay, the first trail I'm going to mention is the Goodnight Loving Trail.
Yeah.
All right. Now
Charlie Goodnight.
it started in Fort Worth. It went west up through New Mexico and north to Denver. And actually, that was the shortest one. Okay, the next one was what they called the Western Trail. It started in San Antonio, went north through Kansas, Nebraska, eastern Wyoming, to Miles City, Montana. And that actually was the longest one.
Well, no, okay.
Let me.
Yeah,
there's 2
go
more.
ahead.
Okay, now the Chisholm Trail also started in San Antonio, and it went north through Fort Worth to Kansas, Abilene, and up to Ellsworth. Okay, now the 4th trail is called the Shawnee Trail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it also started in San Antonio, went up through Dallas, up to Kansas City, Quincy, Illinois, and on up to St. Louis. So there were really 4 main trails, but, all the major trails were broad and general. And, we picture these narrow lanes, and what you just mentioned, they spread out over a long distance to have the feed and the water.
That's right.
And also, what is not mentioned on my map here is that there were a lot of what they call feeder trails.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you might have some coming from up in Mexico, the east or west, and they'll join up with these trails and go on up through the same trail.
Well, see, a lot of the problems that happen on trail drives in the Old West with the cattle also were incurred by people on the Oregon Trail moving to Oregon because they couldn't find the forage for their livestock after another party had already preceded them.
Exactly. That's exactly right, yeah. Now, when only a few herds were following a trail, they usually found enough forage close by, but like you said, with many herds on the move during the season, The later ones had to travel parallel to the tracks of the early ones to be able to find enough grass. And then the drying up of streams and water holes, this also caused variations in the route, because if you probably had a guide out in front of you, and if the stream or river was dried up, you'd have to head either east or west to try to get to cattle.
And you're talking about maybe 4,000 or 5,000 head of the most obnoxious cattle ever on the face of the earth.
Yeah. Now, the Chisholm Trail was widely known by name, and the name was often applied kind of indiscriminately to any route cattle might follow out of Texas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But most of the men who used the trail probably had never heard of Jesse Chisholm or his wagon road. Many thought it was named after the Texan John Chisholm, and that's a name that is more widely known. And he did trail cattle to New Mexico, and some people even today restrict the use of the name Chisholm to the part of the trail that he actually used. So there's a little discrepancy there, but no one really knows, after all, how the Shawnee Trail got its name. But for 2 decades, trail bosses, cooks, and cowboys followed the Longhorns up the Chisholm Trail, unaware they were creating a, quote, legendary West that would long outlive the open range in the cattle kingdom. But, you know, Texas had been a land of cattle and horses ever since the Spaniards came in the 17th century. So Texas was a big cattle area for a couple of hundred years.
Yep.
And the Anglo-Americans arriving in Texas after 1800 actually found thousands of Spanish cattle and wild horses just roaming free. And the Anglos also brought livestock, which mixed with the native stock to produce the Longhorns of South Texas. So they're kind of a mixed breed, really. But the Longhorns were, they were robust, many colors, black, red, roan, white, yellow, and various combinations.
And all dangerous.
They were. They were what they say, long of leg and hard of hoof, which was perfectly adapted to the region. They were able to travel for grass and water. They were able to defend themselves against predators, which sometimes involved a cowboy on foot.
That's right.
They had developed an immunity to the tick fever that proved fatal to other cattle, but unfortunately they carried the ticks wherever they went.
Yeah.
So the Longhorns of the brush country were as wild or more difficult to stalk and kill than deer or buffalo, and they roamed in scattered bands.
Weren't there a lot of the settlers along the trails that absolutely almost came to violence to stop the cattle from getting anywhere near their property because of the spread of the ticks?
Yeah, exactly. And they were sometimes quarantined to not come into certain areas. Now, not all Texas cattle were Longhorns, nor were all immune to the tick fever. The cattle of Central and North Texas, which were a mixture of actually Shorthorns that were brought from the east or south and mixed with the native or Spanish stock, and they were susceptible to the disease. And like the Longhorns, they easily became wild and difficult to handle, even dangerous. And Anglos actually brought thoroughbreds and quarter horses, and both were crossed with little Mustang mares to produce these larger and faster cow horses. A quarter horse, today we think of the quarter horse as the real cow horse, right? So, for many years, however, the Mustang cow pony and the Longhorn were inseparable elements of the Texas cattle industry, and together they made the era of the long drives possible. Now, so let's head after the Civil War, okay? Texas was the source of cattle. Now, before the war, and I didn't realize this, Zeb, but there were 5 civilized tribes of Indian territory that raised and exported thousands of cattle to states to the north and the east. The Cherokee,
that's right,
the Choctaw, the Chickasaws, the Creeks, and the Seminoles had learned open range raising and trailing livestock to the southern frontier. So I don't think people realize that cattle drives actually may have even really started with
I think
these
I read
Indian
a book.
tribes.
I'm trying to look here on my shelves right now about a book that was written about the Indian nations that actually knew more and had started the cattle business more so than what we know of it coming out of Texas.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But the cattle the tribes brought to Indian Territory were apparently of good quality, and according to people at the time, they said they were good. They attained a good size. They were a good beef animal. Now, by 1847, a regular trade had developed with buyers from Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And during the Civil War, there was a lot of looting of the herds of the Indian Territory. The depleted herds were gradually rebuilt after the war to about 700,000 in 1884. So the herds just kept growing bigger and bigger. But anyway, the Spaniards had trailed Texas cattle to Louisiana and northern Mexico actually in the 1700s. So clear back then, there were cattle drives by the Spaniards.
Yeah.
Now, in the 1830s, the Anglo cowmen drove small herds to New Orleans, and in the following decade, they trailed cattle to Missouri, Ohio, and a lot of people don't think of this, but actually over to California. And actually, Zeb, right here where we are...
I was going to say, we're a part of that.
Yes, right through here along the Snake River, there were cattle drives that went from here over to... over into the Oregon area.
One thing I was going to mention, and I don't want to take a lot of time, is one of the best movies that typifies and shows what the life was on the cattle drive was a movie that was simply titled Cowboy, and it starred Glenn Ford and Jack Lemmon, and that went all the way up to the Chicago stockyards.
Okay.
Very good movie.
By 1842, many men drove herds across the Indian Territory for sale to the Army contractors who supplied the forts. They were fairly profitable years for some of the Texas cowmen.
What were the cattle worth then? They weren't.
It depends, because there were sometimes they weren't worth anything because there were too many of them.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly how much.
But when they sold them for beef, I mean, the prices weren't enormous.
Say like $17 a head.
Really?
Yeah, 15 to 17. Yeah. But by the early 1850s, the Texans trailed Arkansas, like say, all the way to Iowa. Hundreds of longhorn steers were sold to freighters and farmers, actually to be worked as oxen. If you were a farmer, a homesteader, a good oxen, a good team or two teams of oxen was pretty important.
Yeah, go ahead and train them.
Yes. I had an uncle that did that. He actually had to train two of them. But anyway, Kansas City became a market for Texas beef, and some Texas cattle were trailed onto Chicago. The Texans also trailed cattle to the California mining regions.
Yeah.
And in 1856, near San Antonio, a herd of 400 steers heading west under a crew of 25 men, all mounted on, get this, Zeb, all mounted on mules. Okay. Okay. Now, most of the riders were working for their keep and transportation to get out to the gold fields. There were 5 or 6 months on the trail, but a steer costing $14 in Texas brought $100 in California.
Whoa, so, they wanted their beef.
Yeah. So in the early days of the cattle trailing, oxen hauled carts or wagons that carried the bedding, the supplies, cornmeal, bacon. If an ox went lame, the men roped a steer or yoked it to the wagon. But that was fun. The food supplied was never adequate, and the men usually had nothing to eat but beef.
Yeah. And by the way, do you know who designed the first chuck wagon?
I want to say Loving or...
No, Charlie Goodnight.
Goodnight, yeah.
Charlie Goodnight.
Yeah. Before the Civil War, most trail herds numbered only a few hundred cattle with 4 riders for each 100 cattle. The men usually had only 2 or 3 horses apiece, and these were often thin, sore-backed, and before the drive ended, these horses were, about shot, really. And without tents or raincoats, the cowboys were at the mercy of the elements day and night. I mean, it was not a glamorous
the rattlesnakes.
4 or 5 months,
Yeah.
But the Shawnee Trail became hazardous for trail men and their herds even before the Civil War because of an outbreak of the Texas fever in Missouri. Killed thousands of cattle.
That's right.
And here's something a little interesting. The disease was correctly attributed to the arrival of the Longhorns from Texas. But the trouble was blamed on the Longhorns' breath. Okay? They thought that the breathing of the Longhorns infected the cattle rather than on the ticks that carried the disease. So the Missouri legislature banned Texas cattle, and Missouri farmers turned back Texas herds the next year. Yeah. But it was the disease that was carried by a tick. So When the trailing cattle resumed after the Civil War, some Anglo cattlemen were not particular about those animals that were in the herds, and rustlers became active as the value of cattle rose. And on one occasion, some Northwest Texas cowmen caught up with a thief who was driving off their cattle, and they ate supper with him and then announced that they were intended to hang him. Now, I'm just going to finish with this little quote, all right?
Go ahead.
So they're going to hang this guy, okay? Got the picture. He's a thief. And so here's what he says. Boys, he said, I'll not argue with you. I'll not deny my guilt or ask for mercy. You know me and I know you. I want at least one honest man to have a part in my hanging. Now I want the one of you who never stole a cow to step forward and put the noose around my head. A moment of shocked silence followed, then laughter. They let him go with the warning. Other cow thieves did not get off so lightly when caught, but most were never apprehended.
There you go. We have a caller with a quick question.
Okay.
Caller, it's got to be short. I've only got about a minute left. Go ahead.
Well, it's not a question. This is Dick Anderson at Albion. My granddad came up to one of those trails for a fellow named John Day, and they trailed they were yearling heifers when they started to John Day, Oregon. It would have been 1874.
Wow.
And they wintered right here somewhere close along the river the first year, and then went on to John Day the next year.
You know, we ought to do, and I thank you for your call. Good to hear from you, my friend. And we'll do a little research. I'd like to do more on the cattle drives that went through this country, Dr.
You know,
History.
I really didn't get through this. So we're going to do another part on the cattle
I
drives
appreciate his calling because, there's so much that we overlook. Idaho had a lot of trail drives going through it. Why don't we finish with this next week and maybe even elaborate a little bit on it, talking about the chuck wagons, talking about the gear the cowboys had back in those days, and I think it'd be interesting.
Okay, yeah, we'll continue with the cattle drives next.
That's all that I know about my granddad. He did come back here and become sheriff. He's the one that went and got Diamond Field Jack.
That's right.
Yuma, Arizona.
Well, I tell you, sir, thank you very much. Good to hear from you. God bless you. I'm out of time, so I got to run, but call again. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's interesting. We got people that live here that know the history, and that what makes the program even more interesting.
It is.
I got to run. Thank you. Excellent job.
Thank you, Zeb.
All right. Dr. History will be back next Tuesday. Let's elaborate on this a little bit more. I know you will, and share us more information next Tuesday at 10:06. Holy cow. Let's see what else have I got to tell everybody. Oh, A Child's World. Don't forget, they bring you Cassia County School Days on Thursdays right here on Zeb at the Ranch at 10:10 on Thursdays. Don't forget A Child's World at 1308 Overland and Burley. All the games, puzzles, toys, clothing, baby furniture, everything for you and your family. And they have the Cherokee Scrubs, too. Stop in today at A Child's World, 1308 Overland in Burley. And right now we're going to send this over to our main studio. I'll be back in about 3 minutes.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb.
Oh, thank you and welcome back. On this program, I get a chance to develop some friendships and relationships with people that are really excellent at what they talk about, various subjects, etc. And this next gentleman is one of those. He is an attorney, he's a political analyst, a great writer and everything, and I say good morning to Hollywood's James Herson. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Zeb. How are you?
Well, I'm good, but I'm going to ask you a question to start things off this morning and kind of set the pace and the tone, if you will. My question is, has Hollywood in general lost its collective mind?
Well, yes, they certainly have. The entertainment business is filled, unfortunately, with people who have been obsessed with identity politics, with hyper-political correctness, to a point where they've isolated themselves really from the rest of the world of normal people. And because they live in their own little culture, they're basically killing their own industry, or at least parts of it. You can see it by the awards ceremonies. Generally, they've had this horrible ratings decline in every one of the major award shows. And that the reason is because people are clicking it off. Their box office really is only surviving by accident. And I say that because there's these movies they make to pay the bills. They don't respect them. They don't like them. They're movies that appeal to families. They're movies that are animated. They're movies that are computer graphic generated, and they're reboots and sequels, and they're comic book movies. And because the reason it's by accident is because they have plot lines that actually reflect traditional plot lines, the kind that we saw in Greek tragedies and in Shakespeare, to take place in a moral universe where you know who the hero is, you know who the villain is. But in the autumn, the real Hollywood emerges that seek pure awards, and then they put out these movies that nobody watches, and they do it for their own vanity. And so what we see in the award shows is either their own vanity with self-congratulations, or worse yet, they start to preach to us about cultural values and political issues that they know absolutely nothing about.
You know, James, that is such a good evaluation of what the industry is like today. And may I add, in my own layman's terms, and Wheels over at the station, we got a little feedback here, please. May I add my own words that these people, these actors, and I've been around many, many of them, all of a sudden with some stardom, if you will, they develop an elitist attitude to where they are so smart and so knowledgeable when really they have a job that they're told where to stand, how to move, and they're trained on what to say and how to say it. They are nothing more than human robots, but all of a sudden when they become a star, so say they have the elevated mentality of a genius.
No, it's true. As a matter of fact, Jerry Seinfeld had a routine like that. He said, you know, here are these people in the acting profession. He says, "Yeah, I don't want to put them down. You know, it's a craft, but they read words that other people wrote and pretend to be other people, and then they want the culture to say, well, look how great they are."
Yeah.
And it is. Let's put it this way: it's an exaggerated greatness, and the really great ones in Hollywood knew that. And so they had something that folks in Hollywood don't possess anymore. It was humility. Probably the hardest virtue for human beings to have, but particularly ones that are famous.
Well, I'm going to show my age a little bit, and you can tell me how far out of the norm I am. But I remember watching the Academy Awards. I remember the MC job of Bob Hope and others that really did a good job, and it added some class. It added clean humor for families, etc. But also at that time, there were better movies for families to stand in line and go see. Today, I think that's completely out of the norm.
It is out of the norm. Well, look, even to the point where the last 2 years, the Oscars were hosted by Jimmy Kimmel. During that period, the Oscars went down so precipitously, they scared the leadership of the Academy. To give you an idea, the last year Jimmy Kimmel hosted, the demographic that advertisers really like, which is 18 to 49, that demographic went down 25% in 1 year. This is after the Oscars had shed about half their audience. So they were in a panic, so much so they said, okay, we got a suggestion. We're going to come up with a new category for award. We don't know what we're going to name it yet, but it'll be based on, oh my goodness, popularity. And the Academy membership freaked out, and there was a severe backlash, and that's all it takes, just a little pushback for this academy. They cave. And so then they said, okay, we're going to go out and get a real popular host, kind of like Bob Hope or maybe Billy Crystal. So they went out and asked Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's the highest paid actor in Hollywood. He is popular. He used to be a wrestler. He's got a lot of people, and he does a lot of family movies. He's very smart in the movies he chooses. But supposedly he had a schedule problem. And so then they went to Kevin Hart, who is also, again, popular and is a comedian, and actually would have been a home run for them. And all the left has this group of social media trolls, as they're called. These are people who search for dirt on everyone, and they try to destroy people. I'm a recipient of social media trolls. Well, they went after Kevin Hart over something that had happened almost a decade ago, a joke he told. They used it out of context and attacked him. And, of course, the Academy caved right away because, again, it was like the beginning of our conversation when I talked about how the people in Hollywood are obsessed with identity politics. And because they're obsessed, you bring it up and they cave. And so the president of the Academy called Kevin Hart to tell him that he needed to apologize. Of course, that upset him. He got ticked off, and he withdrew. So we had an Oscars with no host. Then they tried to shorten the time of the show by having some of the more boring awards that are technical given during the commercial breaks. That led to an open letter being signed by a bunch of overrated filmmakers like Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino. And what did the Academy do? They caved again. So the Oscars were too long. They didn't have they didn't have a host at all, and the Academy, with the producers, suggested strongly that the participants in the show refrain from lecturing the public on politics. Don't even bring up politics. But they couldn't restrain themselves.
Right.
And they did anyway. You could hear the sets clicking off across the country. So they want basically to kill the Oscars. They don't know that they're doing it because they're so out of touch. They live in such an insular bubble, but that's what they're doing.
Well, James, let me ask you this, and I know I'm prejudiced because I'm a Western-oriented person. I would love to see more Western movies, good quality movies. I would like to see more good quality humorous movies. I'd like to see more movies that have some thought process other than just condemning the United States or condemning certain lifestyles, etc. But why doesn't Hollywood get the message? Why don't they understand that people like me don't want to hear the slamming and ramming of our president and the current administration? There isn't one single movie that was made and highlighted this year that my wife and I want to attend. Are we out of the normal?
No, I think you are the normal. And that, again, it comes from the same issue. They're steeped. And they're lemmings. They're not real well-informed people. Many of them aren't highly educated. And they just buy whatever the Democratic Party is selling, even to the point where these idiots in Hollywood are now talking about this so-called democratic socialism as being acceptable. That would, in fact, kill their industry. But that's the thing. They just respond to things ignorantly, and they're not paying attention because there are these low-budget, from Hollywood standards, films in the faith community. Films like I Can Only Imagine and God's Not Dead that have much higher profit margins than anything in Hollywood and are very, doing well. despite not being distributed by major studios, having all kinds of obstacles to release. And so it reflects a groundswell. So I would say, that's expanding while Hollywood is shrinking, and that would be great. By the way, you mentioned Westerns. An area that's south of Orange County now has a new controversy over somebody that is the quintessential Western actor, John Wayne. And there's a 9-foot bronze statue in front of the airport in Orange County because its name is John Wayne Airport. And now the same social media trolls that took down Kevin Hart, the same left wing that wants to take down statues and ban books, they want to erase John Wayne. And they dug up an old Playboy interview from 1971 where John Wayne used some expletives. And if you take it out of context, you're going to say that John Wayne is a bigot. But what they're really after is this movie icon that represented patriotism, that represented Americana, that was a staunch anti-communist, whose words actually ring true today. And so what they're, amazingly, some Pulitzer Prize winning editorialist in the Los Angeles Times wrote an influential piece saying it's time to rename the John Wayne Airport. And this is from, when John Wayne retired, he retired in Orange County. He had a little yacht in Newport Beach. He used to sail around. People saw him all the time on the street. This bigot, who was married 3 times, was married to 3 Latina women. I guess he wasn't a bigot after all. And many of his kids and grandkids are running around Orange County with Hispanic names. It's just, it's amazing that this kind of activity is going on to erase and change history right out of George Orwell's 1984.
When you said all this, I got to tell you something. I got white-knuckled. It makes me mad because, you know something? The movies, irregardless of what John Wayne was like in his personal life, I couldn't care. I know John Wayne and some of the family members, and I knew of the ranch and all of the activity with the horses and the cattle and everything else. But that being said, he also, as you well know, James, I don't have to tell you this, he recorded an album called America, Why I Love Her. And every one of those songs, which was done just not singing, but it was just verbiage that he had in regards to this country that he loves so much. How can anybody call him a bigot and a hate monger and try to do away with the patriotism that man tried to further?
Well, that's right. This is a guy, by the way, who won the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
That's right.
The Congressional Gold Medal. He won an Oscar when Oscars mattered. He set up, he battled cancer in his life. He beat it once, and he died of it. But he set up a very two wonderful charities to fight cancer. This is a guy whose legacy strengthened the country, and his image was so strong. A lot of people don't know this. Joseph Stalin put a hit on John Wayne. He ordered the KGB to kill him, and it's in a book by Michael Munn that this is reported, and it was foiled, of course, thankfully. But that's how he was connected with America, with free enterprise, with liberty, with things that we hold dear. And he was a threat because his image was so powerful. When Nikita Khrushchev came to the U.S. in '59, he said he had 2 requests. He wanted to see Disneyland. He wanted to meet John Wayne, which he did both.
Wow.
This goes on and on. I mean, the idea of erasing John Wayne, that's the thing. He wasn't just an actor. It wasn't just that he was famous. He made it a point to pick his roles, to keep his image, and he would never take a role if any part of the film denigrated America. He would not act in movies today.
Absolutely.
And he, and it lives on. I mean, there are now John Wayne marathons, festivals on these on cable channels, and that's why even kids are familiar with who he is. It just rubs me. I agree with your white knuckle concept. I really, and the social media has been weaponized. What happens is a very small group of people use technology to make themselves look like a large population. And they go after companies, they go after television hosts, and they go after icons like John Wayne. And I just hope and pray that people say, no way, leave the Duke alone.
Well, are there people, I've only got 2 minutes left, James, but are there people, are there groups, are there people standing up and saying, you better hit the road, Jack, and leave this alone or you're going to have trouble on your hands? Or, like in a lot of situations in America, are people just sitting on their pockets and complaining?
Well, fortunately, I looked at the social media. There are a lot of people pushing back for John Wayne. And look, it's not going to be easy to erase John Wayne. In addition to John Wayne Airport, there's a John Wayne Marina in Washington.
Yep.
There's a John Wayne Pioneer Trail in the Iron Horse State Park. There's a John Wayne Elementary School in Brooklyn with a 38-foot mosaic mural that depicts John Wayne and the American frontier. There's a John Wayne Parkway in Maricopa, Arizona. So they're going to have a hard time erasing the Duke.
I'll tell you what, in this office, when you walk into this messy, messy office of mine, of which I'm broadcasting from right now, you'll find over at least a dozen pictures and memorabilia from various movies of John Wayne, and I'm proud, and I'm not going to have any little wussy that's going to try to change things as far as my attitude. I wished I had more time. You got to consent to coming back. I want to do more with the movies. I've got a lot more questions. I'm just flat out of time. James Herson, God bless you, man. I always enjoy having you on.
God bless you, Zeb Bell. Thank you for your courage, and keep up the great work.
I will, my friend. Thank you very much. I just really enjoy having that man on my show, and he's been featured on many, many talk shows, Hannity, etc., and James Herson from California. Thank you very, very much. Right now, we better get the weather forecast in here before I run completely out of time, and the weather's brought to you by Scarro's Meats, 331 North Road, Jerome, with Don Scarrow and the crew. Oh, you can go to their website, www.scarrowsmeats.com, and check out all the great tasting meats, whether it's the marinated pork ribs or the tri-tips, or whether it's the different kinds of bacon, or the sausages, or the bratwurst. I love the bratwurst. Absolutely delicious meats from Scarrow's Meats, 331 North Road, Jerome. The number you can call, 324-7657. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Increasing clouds for today and expect some precipitation for later on this week. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Increasing clouds as we make our way through the day and into the afternoon and evening hours. High near 46. Winds out of the east at about 10 miles an hour. Gusts as high as 21 miles an hour. For tonight, we do have a 50% chance of rain and or snow showers before midnight. Mostly cloudy skies with a low of 33. By tomorrow, 70% chance of rain showers are likely. High of 49 and winds out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Rain showers tapering off for tomorrow night with a low of 33. Then we do have a slight chance of rain and or snow showers for Thursday, expecting a high of 49. And that's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
And I appreciate it, Gina. Thank you very much, Don Scarrow and Scarrow's Meats. 331 North Road, Jerome. Number to call, 324-7657. They are changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time. Our thank yous go out this morning to our major sponsor. Without them, we're not here. And I'll tell you what, we really appreciate them. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations with a big spring tire sale. Whoa, my! You can save a lot of money and get the best of tires for your driving safety. Stop in and see any one of the 7 locations. Check out all the tires, all the different tread designs to work on your car, your pickup, your SUV, whatever you need tires for. Stop in and see them today. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. 7 locations, also with the best in brake service, front end alignments, and shocks and struts and batteries, serving you. Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Daniel on Poline in Twin Falls, and Randy on Overland in Burley. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. I'm going to say this, and I really don't care if you agree with me or not, it's the way I feel, that we need more, much more, a lot more of the John Wayne image and thinking in this country today. We are going along with a nation of wussies. John Wayne stood up, he said it, whether it was in the movies or real life, and he meant it. And that's what we need to get back to. We've lost a lot of the icons that people looked up to, whether it was in the movie business or real life. John Wayne, James Stewart, Robert Mitchum, many more. And we need Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, the list goes on and on. They were not only idols, but they also lived that kind of a life, being an example for young people. And that's what we're missing today. Like it or not, that's the way it is. And we always end the program by saying the way things were, the way things ought to be. How true. And the world needs more cowboys. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8:06. God bless Zeb at the Ranch. See you then.